Hey, it's Vicky, and today I'm going to be talking about the books I read in August. This was a pretty good month. I read 7 things, which is a lot for me lately. And it was kind of a mixed bag review-wise. And honestly, I feel like August was a long month. Like the first couple of books I read, other than one which was 5 stars, they're a little fuzzy, to be honest. Yeah, I read 7 things, like I said. 3 print books, 1 ebook, and 3 audiobooks, and my average rating was a 3.86, so not too bad, not too bad. And yeah, I did have 2 5-star reads this month, so let's dive in. So the first book that I completed in August was Liberation Day by George Saunders. This is a short story collection, and I initially picked this up because I read George Saunders' short story collection 10th of December a few years ago, and I really enjoyed it. Like every single story was solid. And unfortunately this one didn't quite live up to 10th of December. There were 9 stories I think in this collection, and there were definitely a couple that went over my head. I didn't really know what was going on, or they just lost me at some point because his style is pretty literary, but then he'll do things that are kind of maybe speculative, or just a little like maybe a little like magical realism, if you would go as far as to call it that, but very literary in terms of the writing. And so for this one, it was, for the most part, especially now that it's been like a month since I completed the collection, it's kind of forgettable. I didn't have a single 5-star story in here. I did have a couple 4s though. My favorite one was called A Thing at Work, and like I said, at this point now I don't remember anything about it. So yeah, this was pretty forgettable. But I'm not giving up on George Saunders. I feel like he has a lot more out there that I haven't read that is probably really good. And so I will definitely check out more of his stuff. But this one was just okay. So, I averaged out all the stories, and so it averaged out to a 3-star, which is pretty average. Then I had my first of 2 DNFs in August. I DNF'd The Raven Boys by Maggie something. I don't remember. It starts with an S. I was gonna try to read this series. It's the Raven Cycle, because Kayla over at Books and Lala was doing a reread of the entire series and was doing like a buddy read of each book. And the first book was gonna be started in August, and I thought, okay, I'll give it a try, because she raves about that series all the time. It's one of her favorite series of all time. And so I thought, I'll give it a try, why not? And I made it about 50 pages into the book, and it wasn't grabbing me, so I DNF'd it. I was listening to it on audio, and it just wasn't for me, so I DNF'd it. Then I read my first of 2 5-star reads for the month. I read How to Build a Girl by Caitlin Moran, and like I said, this was a 5-star for me. I think for me, it's because it just was my kind of book. It's about a young girl named, I can't remember what her name was, Johanna. And at the start of the book, she's 14, and so she's kind of in that phase of life where she's trying to figure out her identity and how she wants to present herself to the world and all of that. And she also has aspirations of being a writer. So there were things about her as a character that I definitely identified with, because I myself at that age also wanted to be a writer. Specifically, like my dream in high school was to write for Rolling Stone magazine, which I know is probably such a cliche thing. I wanted to write about music. And Johanna also had those sorts of dreams and ends up doing that in the book. She ends up getting a job writing reviews for music around England, and she basically reinvents herself after having this embarrassing moment on TV. She's like, I have to completely change my personality. And then she sort of morphs her new personality around this rock journalist that she's becoming, because she is a talented writer. And What I loved about this book was it obviously had coming of age elements, which is one of my favorite things ever to read about. And like I said, there were definitely things about Johanna that I really identified with. And I think the other thing that I loved was this book challenged me in some ways. And by that, I mean, not the writing or anything like that. It was there were things about Johanna as a character that I kind of had to catch myself and kind of stop myself from. I think I was initially judging her a little harsh, because the very first scene in the book, when you first meet Johanna, she is in bed and she is masturbating. And she masturbates a lot in the book. And she's a very sexual person. And she's very comfortable in her sexuality. And there were parts in the book where I was starting to feel like I was judging her too harshly. And I had to catch myself and say, you know what? If this was a book about a teenage boy, I wouldn't have batted an eye. So why is it bothering me that it's a girl? Like, that's messed up. I shouldn't be feeling that way. Like, you know what I mean? And I loved that it challenged me in that way and made me sort of, face my biases head on, you know, about girls and sexuality. Because it ended up being just a great story, and I loved Johanna as a character. She became very endearing to me. And yeah, I loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. If you are into coming of age stories, this is definitely one you need to check out. So the next book that I completed in August was one I got from the library, so I don't have a physical copy. And it was an anticipated horror release for 2024. And that book was Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman. So this one I wanted to read because the premise sounded really good, because it's about it's a book told from the perspective of a little girl, and she is basically being haunted by this creature, spirit, you're not really sure, this thing that she calls Other Mommy. And Other Mommy was super creepy. And so for me, that sounded really intriguing, but I was also apprehensive because other than Bird Box, I haven't enjoyed anything by Josh Malerman, so I was a little worried. And this one, I'm happy to say I did enjoy, but it still doesn't top Bird Box for me. This one, I think it had some really great, creepy moments having to do with Other Mommy. Other Mommy made this book. She was so creepy. Some of the descriptions of her and the things that she would do was very unsettling. There were also things about the book that I didn't love. For example, it started around, probably even before the halfway point, it started to feel very repetitive. And I don't want to give away too much, but it's basically the characters keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result, which made the book kind of drag a little bit because they kept trying to do this, you know, they kept doing this one thing in the hopes that something would change, and it wouldn't change. And it took them a while to figure that out, and it felt kind of repetitive because they kept doing the same thing. And then the parents in this book were annoying. And this is like something that I think I found also in, what was that book I read? Daphne? I think it was Daphne. Sometimes Josh Malerman has great ideas, great concepts, and he's trying to equate a very real topic with a horror story, right? And sometimes though, when he's trying to get that point across, that theme across, it's very heavy-handed, and it was very heavy-handed in this book. And the way he did it, I did not like. But I understand why he did it, because the book is told through the eyes of this little girl, Bella. So you're never in the head of anybody else. And so in order to get the parents' perspective on things or whatever, and they were often the ones who were kind of monologuing about the general theme of the book. But what he would do is, like, Bella would be pretending to be asleep or something, and one of the parents would come in and sit on her bed and just start talking. And I mean, confessing things that they should not be confessing to their young child about their marriage and their life and their hopes and dreams and this and that. Just, to me, it was completely unrealistic because I have young children and I would never go into their room when I think they're sleeping and just start talking about stuff like that to them. A, because they're gonna wake up, and I'm sorry, no parent wants to purposely wake their child up by doing something like that. And then again, that's not something that you would even say, even if you thought your kid was sleeping. To me, it just seemed unrealistic, and both parents do it multiple times in the book. But I get it, because otherwise he wouldn't have gotten those thoughts across, because Bella wouldn't have been aware of them because the story's told through her eyes. But it did bother me that he did that because it was just weird to me. I think the ending was pretty good, pretty satisfying. And like I said, the horror was pretty good too. So I ended up giving it a 3.5, 3.75. So definitely better than what I have read since Bird Box from Josh Malerman, but not quite Bird Box level. So I would say if it is interesting to you at all, you're intrigued by it, you want to check it out, I'd say go ahead and check it out, but just know it might get a little bogged down in the middle and the parents are weird. Then I read a book for my 100 Epic Reads project, so I'm not going to talk about it here because I did a whole vlog about it. I read The 5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom, and it was a short read, and it was a good read, I have to say. Though I'm not a fan of Mitch Albom as a man, I think it was a solid book, and that's all I'll say. I gave it 4 stars. If you want my deep thoughts on the book, go check out my reading vlog. All right, and then I had my second DNF for the month, and this one is one of my revisit remix books. So one of the 7 that I was supposed to read by the end of the year, or I have to unhaul it, and I'm gonna unhaul it because I started it and I didn't really like it, and that is We Were the Mulvaneys by Joyce Carol Oates. And I wanted to read this initially because I don't think I've ever read, I think I may have read a short story or 2 by Joyce Carol Oates. She's this very well-known, prolific writer, and I wanted to give her a try. And so that's why I had picked this up initially, but I made it, I think it was like 50 or 60 pages in, and again, it just like with The Raven Boys, it just wasn't grabbing me. The story wasn't interesting, and so I DNF'd it. So yeah, this book is well, I might put it on my Pango shop, we'll see, but it's definitely not gonna stay here because I am not gonna try to pick it up again. All right, so the next book I read was another anticipated 2024 release, and that was Stephen King's You Like It Darker. This is a short story collection, and it also was the buzzword for the Buzzword Reading Challenge for August was like, so You Like It Darker. And this one had, oh, I'm trying to remember now, 11? Was it 11 stories, 12 stories? Now I can't remember. Anyway, this was pretty solid. None of the stories got less than a 3-star from me, which is rare because most of the time with Stephen King collections, the ratings are all over the place. There's some I give 1 star to. So I was very pleased that this one was 3 stars or higher. And for me, my favorite story was called Rattlesnakes. And it is basically a sequel to Cujo that I didn't know I needed. But it was a great story, delivered very well, had some unsettling moments, especially if you don't like snakes, of course, which they don't bother me, but I can still see how it would be very creepy for somebody that doesn't like them. And yeah, I thought this was a great collection. That story in particular was good. Another good one was Danny Coughlin's Dream, and then I really liked The Answer Man also. So yeah, I would say they were darker, which, I mean, the title does say You Like It Darker, and these definitely were. And I enjoyed them. So yeah, overall, this collection, I averaged out every story, and overall the collection got 4 stars. Next, I read another 2024 anticipated release. I got it from my library. I started reading this during the virtual reading retreat that I took part in August, and it's called Pink Glass Houses by Asha Elias. And this one, I listened to it on audio, and there were quite a few narrators because there's quite a few POVs in the story, and it basically centers around these group of parents that live in Miami. Their kids all go to the same elementary school, And it's basically about their drama when a new mom comes to town from Wichita and decides that she wants to run for the PTG or PTA like president and goes up against this other mom who's been a part of the community for a while. And these parents are most of them are pretty wealthy. And so there's a lot of drama, and it was just one of those books that was perfect for the time I needed it. Like I picked it up thinking, I need this book right now, and it delivered. It was very entertaining. I loved how like fast paced it was. I didn't want to put it down. I loved how, you know, in one chapter where you were with one POV, they would be talking about another character. And in that chapter, you were like, oh, like you would kind of hear their side of the story in a situation and you'd say, oh, wow, like, yeah, that does sound pretty terrible. But then in the next chapter, you would get that person's POV, the person they were talking about. And then you'd hear their side and you'd be like, oh, well, okay, they're not so bad. It wasn't so bad. That other person was, you know, overreacting or whatever. And you sort of got caught up in the drama yourself. And it was a lot of fun. That's all I can say about it was a lot of fun. It definitely gave off Big Little Lies vibes, which was also a 5-star book for me. So if you liked Big Little Lies, I think you would like this one. It's a quick read. I really have absolutely no complaints about it. It was everything I wanted. I read it so quickly because I couldn't put it down, and it was great. I gave it 5 stars, so yeah. And then the last book that I read in August was one I read on my Kindle, and it was called The Quarry Girls by Jess Laurie. And this one was presented as a thriller, but to me it definitely was not. It centers around a town in Minnesota, I want to say it was. Oh my gosh, why am I blanking? I want to say it was Minnesota. And it's this small like suburb. And one day these two girls, teenage girls who are friends, witness something that they definitely shouldn't have seen. And shortly after, a couple of girls go missing, and they are starting to kind of think that what they saw is somehow connected to the disappearance of these girls. And for me, there definitely is a mystery element to this. It's not a thriller, but it definitely had a mystery element, but to me, it was extremely predictable. There's like all these secondary characters, and it was also very easy to pinpoint in terms of like the whodunit, who that person was. There was no surprise about the twist. There wasn't really anything special about it. And so I feel bad doing this because I go on like Storygraph and I think Goodreads too, and it's rated pretty well, but I'm only gonna give this a 2.5 because I feel like there were parts about it that just felt off to me. Or just like things that didn't quite add up. And like I said, the mystery itself was weak because to me there was no twist. It was very obvious what was going on and who was involved and everything. And so it was kind of disappointing. So yeah, I gave it a 2.5. Wasn't the greatest way to end the month. All right, guys, so that is my wrap up for August. It went pretty well. I love when I get multiple 5-star reads in one month because it doesn't happen very often. So that was a nice way to finish out August. But yeah, I know I did my TBR video for September, and I just want to warn you guys that my TBR has completely gone off the rails because after I filmed my TBR video and posted it, I had like 4 or 5 library holds come in at once. And so my TBR is looking a lot different than I had first planned. But most of the books are 2024 releases. And so I'm excited to see. One of them in particular is one that I thought I was gonna have to wait a really long time for. So it was a surprise when it was my turn already to get the book. So yeah, just wanted to let you know that my wrap up for September is gonna look different than what I was planning to read, but I hope it's still good. I hope the books are good. And yeah, let me know down below what your favorite read from August was, because I would love to know. And I guess that's it. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for watching.